This video for Chapter 5 of An Introduction to STEM Programming with Python is going to cover looping using the for statement. The best way to use this video is to open up Python, pause the video for each of the examples, and try it yourself. Type the program in and really understand what it's doing. Modify it, make it do other things, experiment, play, get to really understand it, and then restart the video, watch the next topic, and do it all again. It'll take you a little bit of time to go through the video, but trust me, it's worth it. There's a word I feel that we really must define before we can go any further. It's a word called iteration, and it's a term that we use in computer science to talk about or to describe repeating things. Iteration, according to the dictionary, is a repetition of a sequence of computer instructions, a specified number of times until the condition is met. That's from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So iteration is repeating, going around and around, doing it over and over again. Python has two main ways to iterate code. The first is the for loop, which we're going to cover this chapter, and the second is the while loop, which we will cover in a subsequent chapter. The for loop is used to iterate through a collection of items, like a list that we covered last chapter, or to loop through a range of numbers. Let's look at our first example of the for statement. There's a lot going on here, so we'll go line by line through this little program. The first line, fruits, equals, sets up a simple list with apples, pears, and peaches that we've done in a prior chapter. The second line, for z in fruits, colon, and be sure that colon is there, tells Python that we're going to loop through the collection of fruits. We're going to loop through the list of fruits, and each time the variable z will be set. The first time through the loop, the variable z will be set to apples, the second time through pears, and the third time through peaches. The colon at the end of the statement tells Python this is the beginning of a statement block. What statements will be iterated or repeated each time the loop executes follow the for state, will follow the colon on the next line, and will be indented. Python uses indentation so to separate the blocks that go along with the conditionals and looping statements, iteration statements. So you can see that inside the loop, indented, is a print statement that says print, I like to eat z. Because I said z would be set to the first value and then the second value and the third value, you can see that it's going to print out, I like to eat apples, pears, and peaches. And then at the end, notice the last statement is not indented. It's been outdented, which means that it's not part of the loop, and it only gets executed once. So you can see that line 1 creates the list. Line 2 starts the loop, or controls the loop. Line 3 is indented and it's part of the loop. It is the statement or statements that get iterated, and then line 4 is the actual outside the loop, and it gets executed once we get done. So we're doing sequence of stepping step by step through our Python program as we've seen in other programs, but we're also doing iteration in the middle two statements. This next Python example just takes what we've seen so far and just makes a second example. This example loops through a list of numbers and multiplies them together. It's called the product of a list. And you can see that the first two statements set up values and sets up a variable called prod, which is going to store the master product or the total product. Then you can see our loop for v in values. We print v, and then we multiply the product by v, increasing the product each time we go through the loop. Both of those indented statements get executed each time through the loop, and then the last statement prints out the value of the variable prod when we're done. Just as a quick aside, when you're looping through a tuple, it works the same way using the for loop as if you're looping through a list. Now let's talk about looping through a dictionary. Remember, dictionaries are keyed value pairs that use a string or an integer or something to, to create a key, and from that key you can get the value. If we use the for loop in a dictionary, with a dictionary, you'll see in the example that what is returned in the, or what is the variable set in the for loop, it actually is the key to the dictionary, not the value, but the key. And you can see here we print out the three keys to the dictionary. As we continue that example into a little bit more detail, you can see here that we're using the key to extract the number of items or the inventory for each of these item numbers. We took that second more complete example, and this is a very complete example because instead of storing a single value in the dictionary for each key, I'm actually storing a list in the dictionary for each value. Notice that the list contains two numbers, and the first number here in this example is an inventory count, and the second is the value or the price of the item. So you can see that AB56, we have 23 of them, and they're worth $5.67. CZ88, we've got 3 of them worth $6 or priced at $6.23. So if we wanted to calculate the total value of our inventory, we would loop through each item using the for statement on line 3. We calculate the value by getting the list and then getting the quantity, and getting the list and getting the price and multiplying them together. We then add the value to the total value, and at the end of the program, we print the total value out. So we've looked at iterating through lists and tuples and dictionaries. Really handy to know how to do. There's another thing that we may want to use the for loop, for statement for, and that's looping a certain number of times. We do that by using the range in the for statement. Take a look at this example. For n in range 4, and you can see that we're going to print n, and then we're going to print n squared is, and then we're going to print n squared. Look at the output. We loop through with n equals 0, we loop through with n equal 1, 2, and 3. So we've looped through 4 times, but the range exists from 0 to 1 less than the number that we define in the range. So it'll loop 4 times. So the range, in its simple form, you give it one number, and the for loop will execute that number of times. Range can also be used with 2 values instead of 1 value, and the 2 values are start and end, where start is the starting value and end is 1 larger than, typically, is 1 larger than the ending value. So you can see that this loop repeats 10 to 20, so it repeats 10, actually 10 times to 19, because if you count 10, 11, 12, you can see that we actually loop through 10 times. So range 10, 20 goes from 10 to 19. Range also accepts a third step, and the third value, and the third value is known as the stepping value. The step value tells Python how many to add each time. Range by default uses 1, as you've seen before, but here we go from 2 to 12 step 2, which would give us 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, but it won't do 12 because it always ends less than that last number, and you can see I'm creating the total of the first 5 even numbers. In our last example, just to show you some of the goofy things and power of the for loop, notice that we have here a loop inside of a loop. We're using a dictionary that contains the months of the year with the value of how many days there are in the month. Followed then, you can see that in the second line, we get M as month, which would give us the key or the three-letter abbreviation of the month name. Then for D in range of 1 to MOS M plus 1 gives us the number of the day, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 31 for January, all the way up to 28 for February. And it then prints out the month and the day, kind of like a calendar. Not the prettiest calendar, but it works. And then notice that the print line of dashes is inside the first loop, but outside the second loop, so that it executes at the end of every month. Pay special attention to the way this loop is nested inside another loop. It's a very powerful technique to nest loops. That concludes our video for Chapter 5 for looping.